In this video, I will be going over the answers to quiz form A. And for number 1, we are graphing y equals negative 2x squared minus 8x minus 5. Hopefully you can identify that the A value is negative 2, therefore making it a parabola that opens up downward, and that means it's a maximum. The B value here is negative 8, which we're going to use in our axis of symmetry formula, which is negative b. So negative b would be a positive 8 in this case, divided by 2 times the a value, which is negative 2. So 2 times negative 2 is a negative 4, and 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. That negative 2 becomes our axis of symmetry. So if you want to take and make a dotted line at negative 2, our vertex is going to fall somewhere on that line. In order to find out what other number our y value is going to be, we need to plug that negative 2 back into the original equation. So for x here and for x right here. So if x is negative 2, we're going to do negative 2 times negative 2, which is a positive 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Then if we take negative 8 times negative 2, we're going to get a plus 16. So negative 8 plus 16 is 8. And then 8 minus 5 is going to give us our y value of 3. So the vertex negative 2, 3 can be found right here. And I'll put that in its correct location. And that is our maximum. In order to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x, basically making all of this part, let me change my colors here, this part equal to 0 because we're multiplying by 0 and we're getting 0. And we're left with the c value, in this case, negative 5. So 0, negative 5 is where this parabola crosses the y-axis. And if we know that, we can reflect it over the axis of symmetry to make our other point. We have enough points to make our parabola, so I will connect that with a curve and do the same thing on the other side, and making sure to put arrows at both ends because it does go on infinitely. If we took that parabola and squished it out along the x-axis, we would find that all real numbers are part of the domain. But if we closed it together here on the y-axis, we can see that all of the range values are less than or equal to 3. So all real numbers less than or equal to 3 for the range. For question number 2, I made an error on quiz form A, which is why several of you had questions. So if you change that plus 4 to a minus 4, you should be able to factor it. In order to get a negative 4, we would have to have a negative number and a positive number. In this case, negative 4 and positive 1 when we factor. Let's just double check that. X times x is x squared. Negative 4x and positive 1x would give us the 3x, the negative 3x, and then negative 4 times 1 would give us the negative 4. So make sure you change that to a negative sign. Then you can set each of the binomials equal to 0. So x minus 4 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. So then the solutions, if we solved for x, would be a positive 4 and a negative 1. Again, to graph this, we can look right away and notice that it's going to be a minimum because the coefficient a is positive, so that will be a minimum. The axis of symmetry is equal to negative b over 2a, so negative b in this case would be negative 3 or a positive 3 over 2 times a. So 2 times 1 is 2. And several of you had questions about that because you were wondering, can we have a fraction? Yeah, we absolutely can. So just make sure that when you're doing that, you're paying attention. This 3/2 is our axis of symmetry. So if I come down here to the bottom, over 1.5, our vertex is going to be somewhere along this axis of symmetry here. When you plug in the x value of the vertex 1.5 in for x up here in the original equation, you get 1.5 times 1.5, which is 2.25. Then a -3 times 1.5 is -4.5. And then the +4, it's actually not +4. I made that error. It's actually -4. So when you calculate that out, you get a -6.25 as your y coordinate for the vertex. So that really does not match the graph that I gave you because it only goes down -2 on the y-axis. But I'm just going to graph it like I would if this was correct. So over 1.5 down 6.25. So here is our minimum, which is our vertex here. And we'll just leave it there for right now. And I promise on the actual quiz, I'll give you a graph that actually has those points available. The y-intercept is when we plug in 0 for x and then find out what we have for the y. So when we come up here, when we plug in 0 for x, we get all of this part right here equaling 0. So what we're left with is that constant value, in this case, is a -4. So -1, 2, 3, 4, there's that one. And if I reflect it over the axis of symmetry, I get the other one. And I would connect those points to make it a parabola opening up upwards. Before we move on to question 3, let's look how the solutions 4 and -1 fit into the parabola. The solutions 4 and -1 are called our roots and can be plotted on the x-axis. And as the parabola is drawn, it doesn't quite go through those points. So this would be a more accurate parabola for number 2. The domain would be all real numbers. So I'm going to bring that over here. If you lay this parabola flat along the x-axis, all real numbers would be the domain. And then the range, if we made it fold up along the y-axis here, it would be all real numbers greater than or equal to the -6.25, which is the y value of our y-intercept. All right, and for question number 3, we know that our parent function f of x equals x squared gives us a nice parabola that touches down at 0, 0. And when we start doing things to our parent function, it makes some changes to our parabola. So as far as g of x is equal to the quantity x plus 6 squared, the width is going to be the same as our parent function, but it is going to shift on the x-axis 6 units to the left. And it's going to be shifted on the y-axis, none. And it's going to be a minimum because it's going to be opening upward just like our parent function. For this next equation, we have a width that's going to be wider because our a value is between 0 and 1, making it a little bit wider than our parent function. It's going to be shifted 3 units to the right on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, it's going to be shifted down 2 units. Since that a value is a positive, it's going to be a parabola that looks like this, which is a minimum. Hopefully that helps you understand what you're going to be assessed on. I promise that you will have 3 questions just like this on your actual quiz. Just make sure you understand all of these components.